Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're exploring why so many Node developers are treating the Wild West of traditional Express setups for the enterprise-grade structure of NestJS. If you've ever built a backend with JavaScript and then watched it slowly turn into this chaotic mess as your project grows, well, you are definitely not alone. We're going to look at the architectural evolution of Node.js apps and discover exactly how NestJS transforms that chaos into a beautifully orchestrated, highly scalable system. So let's dive right in. Why is it that as engineering teams scale up, traditional JavaScript backends almost always devolve into complete architectural chaos? You know, for years, Node.js has made JavaScript the absolute lingua franca of the web. It allowed developers to write both their front-end and back-end in the exact same language, which, let's be honest, was a massive breakthrough. And the default tool for this has largely been Express.js. It is incredibly popular because it's minimalist, it's flexible. But that flexibility comes with a pretty massive hidden cost. When you don't have built-in rules for where your business logic goes, or how your database connects to your user interfaces, every single developer on a team just kind of invents their own way of doing things. Over time, that lack of structure creates a tangled web of dependencies. Suddenly, your application is incredibly hard to test, it's a totally nightmare to maintain, and almost impossible to scale smoothly. There is a really stark contrast between Express's unopinionated freedom, which frankly often leaves you guessing, and NestJS's highly structured approach. Express is what we call unopinionated. It gives you the absolute freedom to implement code however you want with absolutely no predefined rules telling you no. And hey, that sounds great for a weekend hackathon or a small microservice, right? But for a massive enterprise application, it quickly becomes a huge liability. NestJS, on the other hand, is highly opinionated. It tells you exactly where things should go. By adhering to solid design principles, which are basically the gold standard for object-oriented programming, NestJS creates a highly reliable environment that minimizes bugs. It literally forces you to write code that is predictable, modular, and incredibly easy for the next developer on your team to read and understand. This actually brings us to a core philosophy straight from the framework's creators. While Node has great libraries, architecture has always been the missing piece of the puzzle. The NestJS documentation points out a really fascinating historical quirk. While the front-end world got these amazing, highly structured frameworks like Angular, React, and Vue to skyrocket developer productivity, the backend was just sort of left piecing together superb, but completely disconnected libraries. You had a fantastic tool for routing, another great tool for database connections, a separate tool for security, but nothing that brought them all together into a unified, scalable architecture. Well, NestJS was created specifically to solve this exact problem, and it was heavily inspired by the clear, modular structure that Angular originally brought to the front end. Now, here is the crucial point. NestJS doesn't actually replace Express. Instead, it builds an Angular-inspired, highly testable abstraction layer right on top of it. By default, NestJS actually uses Express under the hood to handle HTTP requests. This is absolute genius because it means you still get full access to the massive ecosystem of third-party Express tools and middleware that the community has built up over the last decade. But say you need raw speed and efficiency. Well, NestJS allows you to easily swap out Express for Fastify, a high-performance framework with literally just a few lines of code. And it wraps all of this in TypeScript, meaning you get strong static typing right out of the gate. That catches potential errors during development rather than crashing your app in production. Let's move into Section 1, the restaurant analogy. Here, we'll be understanding controllers, services, and modules. To see how this builds into an elegantly organized system, let's step out of the codebase and into a Michelin-star restaurant kitchen on a busy Friday night. Imagine the request lifecycle. The client makes a request, the waiter, our controller, routes the order, the head chef, the service, executes the complex business logic, and finally, the waiter delivers the response. Let's walk through it. When you sit down at a restaurant, you don't just walk into the kitchen and start cooking your own meal, right? You are the client, and you give your order to the waiter. In NestJS, the waiter is the controller. The controller's only job is to receive HTTP requests from the client and route them to the exact right place. The waiter doesn't cook the food, they just hand the ticket to the kitchen. And the kitchen, that is where our services live. The service is the head chef. This is where the heavy lifting actually happens: data processing, database calls, complex business logic. Once the service has finished preparing the data, it hands it back to the controller, who serves the final response back to you, the client. This strict separation of concerns means your waiters and chefs never ever step on each other's toes. Continuing with our kitchen analogy, we have the module. The module acts as the restaurant manager.
seamlessly organizing everything so the head chef never has to worry about where the ingredients come from. Basically, a module in NestJS groups the specific controller and its corresponding services together into one cohesive block. For example, in a large application, you might have a users module, an orders module, and an inventory module. They function exactly like distinct stations in a massive kitchen. The pastry station, the grill station, the prep station. This modular structure is exactly what allows NestJS applications to scale so effortlessly. When your app grows, you don't rewrite the whole kitchen. You just add another, clearly defined, fully self-contained station. Now for Section 2, Built for Enterprise Scale. We're going to look at why massive teams choose NestJS. Now that we understand the kitchen setup, let's shift gears and look at the tangible business value that makes massive enterprise teams choose this framework over the alternatives. It's not just about writing clean code. It's about productivity, maintainability, and standardizing tooling across hundreds of developers. Looking at some comparison data here, the differences become incredibly clear. Unlike Express, where you manually configure absolutely everything from scratch, NestJS provides built-in MVC support, static typing, and automated API documentation out of the box. Let's break this down a bit. In Express, you typically write in standard JavaScript, which doesn't enforce static typing. NestJS uses TypeScript, providing a highly structured and strict type-safe environment that catches bugs before they ever reach your users. When it comes to unit testing, Express requires you to wire up your own testing environment manually, which, let's face it, can take days to get right. NestJS integrates perfectly with the Just testing framework from day one. And for documentation, Express relies on you writing it manually or cobbling together third-party libraries. NestJS seamlessly integrates with Swagger to automatically generate and maintain a beautiful, interactive API documentation site. Furthermore, NestJS comes packed with some serious enterprise superpowers. Take built-in validation pipes, for example. Think of validation pipes as bouncers at the door of your application. They automatically check incoming data payloads to ensure they meet your strict rules before they are allowed anywhere near your database. Then there's the command line interface, or CLI, which is just a massive productivity booster. With a simple command like nest generate resource, the CLI instantly scaffolds your controllers, services, modules, and the testing spec files all at once. That alone saves hours of setup. Plus, NestJS heavily utilizes TypeScript decorators. You know, those little @ symbols you see floating above functions in the code. This meta-programming magic lets you define routes, set security roles, and document APIs elegantly, all without cluttering up your core business logic. Ultimately, by enforcing a strict but highly scalable structure, NestJS allows your team to stop writing repetitive boilerplate and start focusing entirely on feature delivery. There's a concept called Dependency Injection built right into the core of the framework. Now, without getting too in the weeds, this basically means you can seamlessly add new features and external dependencies without breaking your existing code or tightly coupling your services. It handles the organizational heavy lifting so you and your team can get back to doing what you actually do best, building the product your users want. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought. Are you ready to run Nest new and bring some serious city planning to the wild west of your next Node backend? Express is always going to have its place for quick, minimalist tasks or rapid prototyping. But if you are building an application meant to last, meant to scale, and meant to be worked on by a growing team of developers, well, the structured elegance of NestJS is incredibly hard to beat. The architecture problem of Node.js has finally been solved. So the question is, will you keep building spaghetti or will you start building for scale?